Ayla Ward stepped off the transport truck with the same calm expression she wore in every moment of her life, the kind carved out by surviving storms no one else had ever seen. Falcon Ridge Military Base buzzed with noise, recruits shouting, boots striking the ground, instructors barking orders, but Ayla moved quietly through it all, carrying her small duffel bag as if it weighed nothing. She kept her sleeves pulled low despite the warm weather, fabric brushing over the scars she never let anyone see. To her, they were reminders of a world she had left behind, a place she never wanted to explain, a chapter she wasn't ready for others to read. The moment she stepped inside the training hall, eyes turned toward her. Recruits whispered, nudging each other when they caught glimpses of the rough outlines beneath her sleeves. Someone joked under their breath that she looked like she tangled with a broken fence. Another laughed that maybe she'd tripped into a cactus field. Ayla didn't respond, didn't flinch, didn't even slow her steps. She simply scanned the room with a calmness that unsettled the few who looked closely. Her gaze was too sharp, too trained, like she was mapping exits without thinking. During equipment unloading, one of the crates slipped from a recruit's grip. Before it hit the ground, Ayla stepped forward and caught it effortlessly. The weight that normally required two people rested easily in her hands. Mason, a quiet recruit nearby, stared in disbelief. The others brushed it off, muttering that she must have gotten lucky or that the crate wasn't full. Ayla said nothing, only placed it down gently and continued working. What the base saw that day was a silent girl who seemed too closed off, too strange, too scarred for someone her age. They didn't know the reason she moved like a soldier long before she ever put on a uniform. They didn't know she had spent years training her instincts to react before her mind could catch up. They simply saw a mystery they couldn't understand, so they filled the gaps with mockery. By evening, the rumors had spread across the barracks. Who was she? Where did those scars come from? Why did she seem unshaken by anything? But while they whispered, Ayla sat alone in her bunk, staring at her hands that had held onto life and death too tightly, hands that refused to forget. And deep down, she already knew this base would eventually learn the truth she was trying to hide. The second day of training brought a brutal midday heat that pressed down on the recruits like a weight. Sweat pooled beneath their collars, and even the toughest trainees rolled up their sleeves to breathe. Ayla tried to keep hers down, but the scorching air made it impossible. When she finally pushed the fabric upward, a wave of silence swept across the training yard. The scars covering her arm weren't small or accidental, they were deep, jagged, uneven, running across her skin like someone had dragged fire across it. They didn't look like injuries from simple mistakes. They looked like survival. For a moment, no one spoke. Then the loudest recruit, Dax, forced a laugh to break the tension. "Damn, Ward, you wrestle bears in your free time?" He joked loudly, and a few others joined in with forced, nervous chuckles. Ayla just stared ahead, expression blank but eyes darkening, as if she had heard the same kind of laughter 1,000 times before, and each time it scraped at something inside her. In the shooting range later, she said nothing to anyone. She simply lifted the rifle and fired. One shot, then another, then a third. Every bullet tore through the exact same point on the target, forming one perfectly symmetrical hole. The instructor blinked, speechless. Recruits exchanged looks. Dax scoffed, but his voice cracked. "Lucky shots." Ayla didn't look at him. She didn't need luck. She had precision carved from years she never talked about. During combat drills, her movements were fast, fluid, too controlled for someone supposedly new to the military. She avoided hurting her partners, adjusting every step to keep the sparring safe. But even then, glimpses of her true training slipped through. Mason noticed the way she pivoted, the way her stance shifted with the discipline of someone who had fought for survival, not for sport. That night in the barracks, while others laughed about their day, Ayla lay awake, staring at the ceiling. When sleep finally took her, It wasn't peaceful. Flames roared in her dreams. A collapsing building, screams, the weight of someone's hand slipping from hers. She jerked awake, heart pounding, breath tight, scars burning with phantom heat. Her scars weren't marks of shame, nor the result of reckless accidents. They were memories carved into her skin, memories of a battlefield civilians were never supposed to walk out of alive. But the recruits didn't know that. Not yet. And Ayla prayed they would never have to. The third week of training was supposed to be routine equipment checks, inventory sorting, and a maintenance drill near the ammunition storage bay. The afternoon felt normal until a violent ripping explosion shattered the calm. The ground jolted, lights flickered, and thick black smoke roared from the storage area. Recruits froze in panic, unsure whether it was an attack or a massive accident. Instructors shouted orders, alarms screamed across the base, and 2 recruits were reported trapped inside the burning bay. Before anyone could react properly, Ayla was already moving. She sprinted toward the smoke without hesitation, slipping past the crowd of stunned trainees. Someone yelled for her to stop, but she didn't even slow down. Her feet carried her with the same instinctive movement she used to navigate collapsing ruins in her nightmares. Flames licked up the walls of the storage bay. Ammunition crackled dangerously, and the structure groaned like it was moments away from falling apart. Anyone else would have waited for the emergency fire team. But Ayla ran straight into the smoke. Inside, the air was suffocating. Heat slammed against her body like a wall, but she had felt worse. She ducked low, navigating through burning debris with eerie confidence. Her breathing stayed calm, controlled, too calm for someone who had never officially seen combat. She found the first recruit pinned under a fallen metal beam. Without hesitation, without fear, she braced her body and heaved it upward, muscles trembling but refusing to fail. The recruit stared at her like she wasn't human. She pulled him out and guided him toward the exit, but she didn't leave. Not while another person was still inside. She turned back into the chaos, ignoring popping ammo and dripping flames. The second recruit was unconscious, surrounded by fire. Ayla grabbed a torn tarp, beat down the flames enough to reach him, and hauled him onto her shoulder. The moment she carried him out of the smoke, the emergency team finally arrived and stopped in disbelief. Ayla, the quiet girl they all whispered about, had just executed a perfect battlefield evacuation as medics rushed in. Recruits stared at her with a mixture of awe, confusion, and fear. No logistics trainee should have been able to do what she just did. No rookie should have moved through fire like someone who had lived inside it, before anyone could question her. Military police stepped forward. Ayla Ward, one of them said gravely. "The general wants to see you, now." And suddenly, the entire base realized she wasn't who they thought she was. They escorted Ayla to the general's headquarters through silent hallways. The kind of silence that only happens when people know something serious has been triggered. The military police didn't touch her, didn't rush her. They simply walked beside her with a strange respect written on their faces. Ayla kept her eyes forward, her breathing steady, though inside she felt the old pressure building in her chest, the one she thought she had escaped when she chose a quieter path. She had hoped the world would never see the person she used to be. But the fire had forced her hand, and she knew the general would not let that go unanswered. When the office doors finally opened, Ayla stopped cold. Inside, standing in perfect formation, were 5 high-ranking officers. The air was heavy with authority. Every medal, every uniform, every stare in the room felt like a weight pressing down on her. The recruits who had followed behind to watch stood frozen. They had never seen this level of formality, and certainly not for a simple trainee. Then the general himself stepped forward. General Rourke was a man known across the entire region, a legend of countless covert operations, a man who rarely showed emotion. But now, as he looked at Ayla, his expression carried something deeper, something almost like regret. He circled her slowly, taking in the ashes on her clothes and the burn marks on her gloves. Then stopped in front of her with a long, heavy sigh. "You weren't supposed to reveal yourself yet," he said quietly. Voice steady but full of meaning. The recruits exchanged confused glances. Reveal? What was she hiding? The general reached for her jacket. Ayla didn't resist as he unfastened the patch on her shoulder. Beneath the standard trainee emblem lay another Mark I none of the recruits had ever seen before. A black insignia shaped like a broken circle with a single silver line cutting through it. Whispers erupted instantly. "No way. That can't be real." The general raised his voice, silencing the room. "Recruits," he said firmly, "consider yourselves privileged. Very few people ever stand in the presence of someone with this insignia." He stepped aside, allowing full view of the hidden patch. "This is the mark of the Ghost Division," he declared, "a unit the government denies exists. Only 13 operatives have ever carried this emblem. And Ayla Ward is the youngest of them." The recruits froze, jaws dropping. The general continued, turning toward Ayla with a look of absolute respect. "She is the lone survivor of Operation Eclipse, the mission where 42 elite operators fell. She saved 137 civilians before extraction. Her scars are not stories of mistakes. They are proof of a soldier who didn't die when everyone else did." Silence crushed the room. And in that single moment, every rumor, every joke, every whisper about Ayla shattered into dust. The room remained frozen long after the general finished speaking. Not a shoe scraped the floor, not a breath dared come out too loud. Every recruit stared at Ayla as if she had just transformed before their eyes, because in a way, she had. The quiet girl they mocked wasn't simply strong. She was a living legend who had walked out of a mission no human was ever expected to survive. Ayla kept her gaze low, not out of shame, but because she hated this being seen, being exposed, being remembered for things she wished she could forget. Her heartbeat echoed in her ears as the weight of the general's words settled over her, like a shadow she had tried so hard to outrun. General Rourke stepped closer, his voice softer now. "You disappeared off the radar. We thought you wanted out forever." Ayla swallowed hard. "I did, sir. But wanting peace doesn't erase what I am." The officers behind the general exchanged looks, some full of admiration, some full of sorrow. Only those who had seen real war understood how devastating survival could be. The recruits who once mocked her scars now stared at them with a different emotion, awe. The very marks they joked about were the reason hundreds of innocent people lived. They suddenly seemed sacred. Mason was the first to move. With trembling hands, he stepped forward, heels clicking sharply as he saluted her. His voice cracked when he said, "Ma'am, not Ayla, not recruit, but ma'am." A title of respect, a title of honor. And like a ripple across water, the rest followed. One by one, recruits stood upright, their faces drained of arrogance and filled with genuine reverence. They saluted her, not out of fear, not out of obligation, but because she had earned something far greater, their belief. Ayla looked at them, her eyes softening. They didn't know the burden she carried. They only saw the surface of her story, never the nights she woke gasping for air, or the memories that clawed their way into her dreams. But for the first time, she didn't feel alone among them. For the first time, they saw her as something other than a mystery or an outsider. General Rourke cleared his throat. Drawing every eye back to him, "Operative Ward," he said, using the title she hadn't heard in years, "the Ghost Division has sent a request. They need you back." The words struck her like a pulse. Images of burning streets, collapsing buildings, and soldiers falling around her flashed through her mind. She had spent years trying to bury those images. She wanted to choose a life where she wasn't defined by war. But the call of the Ghost Division wasn't just an order. It was a reminder of the people she had lost, the civilians she had saved, and the unfinished duty that still whispered her name. Her breath trembled for the first time. She closed her eyes, grounding herself. And when she opened them, the fear had faded, replaced by the same resolve that had carried her through the nightmare of Operation Eclipse. She stepped forward. "Tell them," she said softly. "I'm ready." The general nodded, pride flickering in his eyes as Ayla walked out of the room. The recruits didn't see a trainee anymore. They saw a warrior reborn. They saw who she really was.